Hello, today I will be talking to you about Modern Times by Charlie Chaplin. To begin with, there is a scene where they bring in a machine that feeds the workers automatically. I believe this is an important scene of the film because it demonstrates how large corporations in those times only cared about themselves and their money. And as they say, time is money. So they brought in this machine that, when they put in Charlie Chaplin, fed him. Unfortunately, it went haywire and started beating him almost, which was quite humorous. And you see a almost third person view a camera shot to demonstrate the machine in its entirety and not a specific aspect of it, which is interesting because it gives you a feel of what the machine looks like as an ensemble. Moving on. Now this is what happens when Charlie Chaplin sort of loses it, and he gets consumed by the belt-fed machine. What's really interesting about this scene is that it's interesting to see how the cogs go on regardless of the fact that he's in the machine. And this is representative of the fact that businesses in those times, and maybe even today, I don't know, just don't care what happens to their employees, or at least some of them. I take that back. Some of them don't care. And that is the after product. Charlie Chaplin is going through this machine while no one's bothering to stop it. They only stop it only when he reaches at the top of the cog on the top right. And you see, it's again, they use a third-person view to see what he looks like going through the machine instead of putting the camera right in front of his head to actually get the motion of going up and down, kind of a first-person view. Next up, we have Charlie Chaplin, who is again losing it. This is one of the funnier scenes because he looks absolutely insane. This does not have much symbolic meaning, but it could represent him trying, regardless of the fact that he's losing it. It could demonstrate that people should have fun in the factory and not look miserable and keep doing the same job over and over again. And that's maybe a message that Charlie Chaplin was trying to convey during this scene. Now, moving on. This scene is Charlie Chaplin who by accident picks up a red flag and is in front of an angry mob protesting, and that represented communism. And in those times, communism was the worst enemy of the capitalists. And coincidentally, the police show up and arrest Charlie for being a promoter of communism, which he really was not. And it just demonstrates back then how much they despised, I can use that word, despised communism, because it was against making profit and living well. It was just conflict in ideology. Moving along. Now this was an interesting scene. As you can see, they shot, first of all, they shot the scene at an angle to get a feel of what the woman is feeling while she was jumping in joy. And also it was representative and somewhat symbolic of the American way of living, the American dream. It was showing how when a man left his house, he was happy in the morning. He loved his wife to his maximum potential. He was overly joyed to go to work, and he did not miss her. But that's not the reality of life. What Charlie Chaplin was basically trying to say is that's a lie, and that does not exist. Some marriages were just forced upon people, and they could not get out of it because religion was just such an important part of life. Now, you will have the cases where it's true love, where one truly has a deep relationship with another. But in religious times, one can question how often that actually happens. Now, moving on, this quote actually has a big relevance to that time. Now, you see how factory workers all did the same thing and probably have a low education. And it sort of applies to today. If you don't have a high education or a good education, you won't get far in life. Now, when Charlie Chaplin wrote, when the girl said to, no, sorry, pardon me, when the manager said to Charlie Chaplin, "I hope you can sing," that basically what Charlie Chaplin was trying to convey is that during that time, in order to be successful, you either need one one at least thing that was made obvious. You need talent. You need an ability that makes you stand out among other people. And that's what Charlie presented during his funny dancing scene. Therefore, when the man said, "I hope you can sing," he literally meant, "I hope you have a talent, or else you won't be successful, and I probably won't hire you." And it was really interesting to see when Charlie started breaking out into singing words that are actually incomprehensible. And yeah. Now the next little movie I will show you is when Charlie loses it and gets consumed by the machine. This is just a visual representative of what I was trying to communicate to you guys with my first two slides. And basically how when Charlie loses his mind, he starts acting wacky, and you can see by the angle of the camera towards Charlie's face and how it's kind of positioned towards his back in order for you to get a feel of how he's doing his job and how he's trying to move as fast as he can in order to keep up with the belt, and then he gets consumed by the belt. So enjoy the clip. The last slide was truly a happy one. It was one of those typical happy endings where the couple walks off in this case, into the mountains and live happily ever after, which doesn't actually happen. In real life, yes, you can have a happy ending, but I've never seen someone walk into the mountain range happily ever after. It was quite interesting because how Charlie recorded this particular scene is that he was staring straight at the couple, and at the same time he had a wider angle, so you could actually get a full feel of where they were walking to. So you can see, the valley going towards the mountain range, and how they looked very happy together. And that's an iconic scene. It's seen almost in every, well, maybe not every romantic movie, but it's seen in a couple of them, where the couple walks happily into the sunset. So what Charlie was trying to say is that sometimes there is a happy ending, and sometimes there isn't. In this case, there is, but it just leaves the possibility of there is not a happy ending. Thank you.
Is there a difference between acting, sound, and no sound? Yes, there is, because people can use their imagination and improve it by reenacting what they would say and have a better idea of their acts and movements, so it really concentrates on how their movements are instead of what they're saying. And on top of that, it's like a blind man. Blind man can't see, but he can hear better than the average person. And it's the same thing in this movie. We can't hear, but we can really look at what his actions are. Camera work in this movie done very well. The angles are really interesting because you get to see different perspectives. Acting is well done, and I find personally clever because I found sometimes were very funny and sometimes were sad, which really shows that it did a good job conveying emotions. The story flow was, I find, a little choppy because it kind of skipped from one large scene to the next, from the jail cell to the restaurant to him in the streets. I just found that they could have worked on the flow a little more. What was unique about this film was the silence with just these spontaneous sounds. That was really, I found that very interesting because it was generally no voices, but then they added in special sound effects. It was a comedy, I found, because I found it very funny. And these social criticisms, it criticizes the work at that time and how people were mistreated, and they were basically treated like animals, and how they were trying. All that time revolved around money, and that was the capitalist way of being. If we go back to the sequences in the film, there were three general sequences I found: the jail cell, the street, and the cafe. The jail cell was when he was in the jail being comfortable. That says that I think Charlie Chaplin used that particular scene to demonstrate that people tried to cut themselves off from reality and loved being in their own world. Him in the street, because there was a great debate between capitalism and communism, and at the cafes because everybody tries to make a living, and without a talent, people could not get far in life. Thank you.